How's it going guys, Chris here, and in today's guide we're going to be travelling over to the Andromas and Guniibuu systems in Starfield to take a look at what kind of alien creatures and fauna types happen to be living there on those planets and moons. The Andromas system in Starfield is a level 15 one with a couple of interesting places for us to check out as far as fauna is concerned. And one of those places is Andromas II, a planet with quite a few different biomes, home to 5 different creatures. So pretty much as soon as you step off your ship, you're probably going to be met by lots of weirdly shaped flying things hovering around above your head. These flying things are actually one of Andromas II's more populated life forms, with them being the Canard filterers. Peaceful aliens that gracefully flap around in the air above, usually in pretty large numbers too. At a first glance, it might seem that the game's decided to glitch out and spawn a load of fish aliens in the sky. But despite looking like something that probably could be in the ocean biome, these creatures are actually supposed to be there, and they've actually found a way to swim through the air, gliding around while using their wings to propel them forwards. They sort of look a little bit like a hammerhead shark fused with some sort of stingray, giving them a very unique appearance. And with them inhabiting several different biomes, this lets them be seen far and wide across the planet's surface, adopting different colours and patterns on their skin, depending on what kind of environment they happen to be living in. Something else you'll be able to find all over the planet is a far less graceful alien called the pack Brainsprout, which is basically a lizard creature with a huge head. Not exactly sure where this guy gets his name from, especially considering the amount of brain aliens that can be found roaming Starfield's galaxy, but when it comes to appearance, this one's probably got more in common with a chameleon than a head noodle. Though they definitely like hanging around in packs, so I guess that part makes sense at least. These pack Brainsprout aliens are one of Andromas II's more vicious life forms, having a fearless temperament, usually attacking humans and other creatures it can reach without much hesitation. They'll attack with that large gaping jaw, lunges and tail swipes, with the whole pack usually hunting you down together to try and whittle down your health. And because they can be found in several different biomes, you can also expect to see these creatures with a few different paint jobs too, though typically having a different coloured head compared to their body. A creature that likes to take things at a much slower pace is the herding snail Grazer, the planet's smallest alien and generally one of its most passive. These things might seem a little bit gross, pulsating and wriggling around on the floor, but at least they won't cause you any trouble, happily going about their business, munching on the grass and trying to stay out of harm's way. They definitely don't look like your average snail, but you can at least see where it gets its name from, having a lot of similar characteristics and an overall structure, without that hard shell of course. Their bodies are shaped like a snail or slug-like creature, but given the complete alien makeover, with all those weird frilly bits and jagged spine spikes, along with much more vibrant colours too, depending on the variant. Just be aware that smacking one will probably upset it, causing it to very slowly come charging your way. You've been warned. Anyway, let's go to the seaside to check out what kind of fauna awaits us there. You probably won't want to paddle around much in Andromas II's oceans, as although the water itself is completely safe on this planet, the creatures lurking underneath the surface certainly aren't, with one of those creatures being the hunting Sharkwhale, which is basically what you'd expect a creature called a Sharkwhale to be. No, these guys aren't exactly giants like the name might suggest, but they're still fairly large fish with shark-like faces and pretty bad tempers. Not exactly a great combo. They've got several fins running down their bodies, a fairly long tail, and a surprisingly colourful set of markings, which actually makes them look quite nice outside of the water. Not that they'll be outside of the water much though, as you'll mainly be spotting them on your scanner, lurking under the surface. Though when they do attack, they can also deal laceration damage with boosted armour penetration, which isn't a very good thing for you. And it's definitely not a very good thing for the next creature which shares its waters, if you can really call it sharing. The creature I'm on about here is the schooling Seahag Grazer, which basically spends most of its alien life trying not to be a shark whale's dinner. There's quite a lot of these fish in Andromas II's oceans, yet most of them wind up being victims to shark whale attacks, with dead sea hags drifting around pretty much everywhere. Though if you do find one that somehow kept itself alive, they're not always so pleasant themselves, with most of them trying to stay out of harm's way, but others choosing to attack with venomous bites instead. These big brain-headed fish are otherwise definitely up there with some of the weirder looking creatures in Starfield, having all those eyes and flippers, along with scaly skin that kinda looks a bit reptilian. They usually try and hang around nearby to the coastline, often in small groups, though despite having a brain for a head, most of them still can't outsmart those shark whales, which remain to be the king of Andromas II's oceans. So another planet host to alien life in this star system is a pretty unique one called Andromas III. It doesn't have quite as many environments or fauna types, only having 3 in total, though some of the ones found here are definitely worth checking out, with this planet actually being really densely populated, and surprisingly interesting. One One of the reasons why this planet's so cool is because of the huge masses of herding Brainblimp filterers floating around above your head, which are basically like big blobby alien clouds. These things sort of act in a similar way to manatees, only ones that drift around littering the sky in large flocks. Their bodies and heads are joined together, and they seem to glide around using a bunch of frilly wings underneath their stomachs. Thankfully, these things are generally peaceful creatures, often choosing to hover around to take a quick look at you. And because they can be found in both the craters and frozen plains biomes, this also means that we'll be able to check out two unique variants, both having their own set of colours to better match their surroundings. With all that said, it's probably best not causing these guys any trouble, as although they won't start a fight, they will take part in one if you start blasting your guns at them, with them often being backed up by a bunch of mates, making them fairly tricky things to escape from, being airborne. Though the Brainblimps aren't the only creatures to dominate the skies of Andromas III, with it also being host to another flying alien creature called the herding Natiloos filterer, something else which can also be found clumped up together in fairly large clusters high up in the sky. Now these things are definitely strange looking, basically being a floating ball with a bunch of tentacles dangling down. It's got a shell-like armoured body structure, with its vital organs being housed within it, which can actually be seen if you look closely through some little transparent portholes either side of the creature's body. The Natiloos filterers do have a slightly different temperament to the other creatures though, still being generally peaceful aliens, but also being more prone to attacking should you get a little bit too close for comfort. Not that you'll be doing that much with them usually being so high up above your head, but just know that they can come swarming at you should you wind them up. Though as far as land creatures go on Andromas III, the only thing you're going to find here is the Coralheart filterer, a bug-like alien with a heart-shaped body, along with a translucent membrane filling in the gaps. These are fairly popular creatures found around Starfield's galaxy, found in quite a few of its different star systems, though they typically enjoy living in frozen climates, being well adapted to the cold. But unlike a lot of the others, the variants on this planet can also thrive in the crater biomes too, giving them more of a greenish colour to better match their surroundings, but otherwise being pretty similar peaceful creatures to their species on the other planets and moons. So that's the Andromas system done and dusted, but let's zip over to the Guniibuu system next to see what kind of wacky things awaits us there. This level 20 star system's got quite a lot of planets and moons, though only 2 of them are host to native alien creatures. With that said, there's still quite a few to check out, and some of them are as crazy as they come. But let's start off on the planet of Guniibuu II, where we'll actually be able to find quite a lot of nasty looking bug creatures, with one of those being the herding Clickbeetle Grazer. These are essentially huge, ugly cricket type things which hop around in groups all over the planet's mountains and savanna plains. They're pretty gnarly looking in appearance, being covered in beady eyes, bristly legs, and having a bit of a creepy looking face, to complement its monstrous looks. Not exactly a bug you'd want to run into on a nice little trek through the countryside. Clickbeetles are one of the planet's most popular life forms, being found practically everywhere in their respective biomes, and because they don't like to be disturbed, it can be very easy to accidentally walk near a pack of them to trigger a chase, with them all coming bouncing over to try and fend you off. Just a word of warning, they can also spit stuff at you too, so that tall rock you're standing on probably isn't going to save you much. Another nasty bug you're likely to run into here is the pack Exocrawler, a much more menacing creature that's prone to attacking without any reason. The Exocrawler's got a scorpion-like body structure, able to scamper around pretty quickly on its 8 legs. Not to mention it's also got several weapons to use when hunting and defending itself, from several sharp fangs to that long pointed tail, capable of stabbing its opponents with a sharp barb on the tip. Because they like to hang around in small packs, they have a tendency to aggressively charge at anything that treads nearby. This makes them very hostile creatures that you'll probably be best giving a wide berth, as when they all come scurrying over, it can be awkward to outrun them, forcing you into a fight that you might not have wanted, which is definitely true for the Clickbeetle, which often fall victim to their vicious attacks. A much smaller, less angry bug creature can also be found on Guniibuu II in the form of the Thorn Grazer, resembling some sort of shelled beetle with a really interesting looking hood ornament. Its head is practically a large spine which protrudes out from the top of its body, covered in what seems to be eyes which wrap around the front section, with the back part coming to a sharp thorn-like point, which is likely where this guy gets his name from. You don't need to worry about these things nibbling at your ankles or anything, with the Thorn Grazer being another non-violent bug that skitters around in many of the planet's environments, just wandering around, grazing off the lands, and going about their day. Anyway, let's head over to one of the planet's swamp biomes, where we'll be able to find a bunch of aliens that sorta look like butterflies at a first glance, but as it turns out, they're actually small mammal creatures with a pretty weird body. The flocking Earback herbivore kinda resembles a small elephant or tapir, having a short stubby trunk and body, but also having a funky mask on their face, along with a massive sail-like appendage sticking out from its back, which is undoubtedly where this thing gets its name from. You can find large groups of these guys marching around the grasslands, foraging on the plant life and sticking around close to each other to have better safety in numbers. That ear-shaped back makes them pretty easy to distinguish in the environment, quite literally making the creatures stand out amongst the tall grass, which isn't exactly good for keeping a low profile. Probably why these guys like to hang around together for better protection. Not that this is really going to help them do that very much, with our next creature being an absolute menace towards these guys. The apex predator on Guniibuu 2 is a large deadly alien crab called the hunting angler stalker, something that's prone to chasing down those earbacks and making their lives a bit of a nightmare. They're not only going to be hostile towards the rest of the fauna living in the swamps, but if you get spotted, you can also expect them to come charging your way too, unsurprisingly. Angler stalkers are pretty quick for their size, having powerful legs and a tough outer shell, giving them extra protection against your attacks. Also having a small angler jutting out from their heads, probably acting as a lure to draw other, more gullible creatures closer, while it's clumped up on the floor pretending to be a rock. These creatures are pretty relentless, using a combination of quick lunges and bites to dish out the damage, while able to jump around and scurry out of the way of your shots, having agility on their side too, as well as power. Though something that's just about as relentless, but nowhere near as fearsome, is another creature that will stop at nothing to try and put an end to your space exploration trip, despite only being the size of a large rat. The herding Morion Grazer is hilariously determined to take you on, even though it's basically just an underpowered slug that takes forever to get anywhere. It might have a fancy head crest, loads of teeth, and a bit of a crazy looking face, but it's still only got a slither of health and can be outrun by simply walking in the other direction. Nevertheless, if you give it a good smack and knock a bit of sense into the creature, it's often going to realise its mistakes and turn around, which is probably a wise decision. Morion Grazers tend to travel around in groups, and they can be found pretty much all over the planet's surface. There was something else that can also be found in Guniibuu 2's ocean biome. Here's another fish-type alien called the schooling Lurefish Scavenger, which is actually one of the trickier creatures to actually see without your scanner, due to the planet's oceans being super bloody deadly to swim in. You can see by their silhouettes that these things have a bit of a strange shape and structure to them, which is revealed better when they come to the surface. It's a very thin alien, with lots of weird thin legs and spore-like appendages protruding out from its body, with large fungus-like growths running down its back, with some kind of proboscis-type organ sticking out from its face. Unfortunately, due to the water being so corrosive, instantly poisoning you if you try and take a plunge, getting a good look at the creature isn't quite so easy. Though the Lurefish Scavenger obviously seems pretty fine in that greenish water, able to tolerate its highly acidic properties. So it's probably worth mentioning that the Coralhearts from before can also be found here on this planet too, in the form of the Coralheart Grazer variant. There's not really much else to add about these guys, other than the fact that they prefer to live in the frozen biomes, which is kinda typical for Coralhearts, often being spotted in cold climates on other planets too, spread out over Starfield's galaxy. Anyway, the last place you'll be able to find native alien life in this star system is on a moon called Guniibuu 6b, with another 4 different alien creatures for us to check out over several different biomes. One of the moon's more common fauna types is the herding Tongueface Geophage, and it's pretty easy to see where this creature gets its name from, with its head essentially just being a hole with a bunch of tongues dangling down. Now this one's shaped like a long-necked dinosaur, kinda like a Brachiosaurus, only a hell of a lot more bizarre, complete with a head crest and strange growth-like structures running along the alien skin. The Tongueface can be found in most of the moon's biomes, from its volcanic areas to the dusty hilltops, having safety in numbers to help better protect them from the moon's predators. They don't normally run around attacking humans and other creatures, but they'll certainly try and fend off an intruder, should they get too close by, having some potentially deadly stomp attacks, while also being resistant to physical and energy damage, down to having such a thick hide. The biggest threat the Tongueface has though, is the moon's most vicious predator, with that being the hunting Vectorback. Now similar variants of these guys can also be found on the planet of Nisoi in the Olympus system, but these ones are noticeably a lot bigger and more aggressive. Think of the other guys as velociraptors, and this guy being the T-Rex. With these variants of the Vectorback also being found in volcanic biomes too, this also gives them a more sinister, fiery appearance to their counterparts, with their skin being a mottled lava colour, which better suits the moon's harsher environments. Obviously, these guys are going to chase you down when given the chance, and although they're not exactly fast creatures, they can still lash out with some dangerous strikes if you're not careful. If you want to see a really cool looking Vectorback variant with some funky blue and yellow patterns, then you might want to travel over to one of Guniibuu 6b's coastal settings, where you'll be able to spot these guys in abundance. Just be careful not to get your head bitten off. Speaking of cool alien variants, you might also remember these strange little Milliwhales from Nisoi as well. Though with Guniibuu 6b having a few different environments to Nisoi, the Milliwhales often look a little bit different to the others here too, with the coastal ones having blue bodies and red tails, while the variants found in the volcanic regions being a dark greyish colour with a load of cool markings, sort of giving off a bit of a tribal vibe. They're otherwise almost exactly the same creatures, also being the filter variants, being a similar sort of size, while having the same sort of characteristics as the Natiloos ones. Just expect to see them scampering around on those stubby legs, roaming the moon's different environments. Just like the other fauna-filled Guniibuu planet, this one's also got an extremely hazardous ocean biome too. Only this time, instead of corrosion, the water here is practically like liquid nitrogen, having ultra-freezing properties that can be lethal if you hang around in it too long. This doesn't seem to bother the Shoaling Finback Scavenger though, capable of withstanding those icy effects with plenty of them drifting around along the moon's coastlines. And as you can see via the scanner, they sort of have the shape of an over-exaggerated Dorado type fish. Out of the water gives us a better look at the creature, having a huge sail that runs right the way down the head and body of the fish, also having several colourful yellowy-orange fins to help it traverse around, but otherwise looking like something that probably should live in the ocean, being very fish-like, unlike some of Starfield's other sea creatures of course. So that's it for this one guys, I do hope you enjoyed the guide. Please drop us a like if you did, and if you want to see more of those aliens in Starfield along with other creatures, enemies and bosses from other games, then now's a pretty good time to subscribe and check out the channel for plenty more stuff that you might be interested in. Thanks for watching, take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in that next one.